Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today is Monday, June 29th, 2020, and I'm not sure where to begin. It has been an eventful morning and an eventful weekend. To give you quickly a summary of the topics that I want to hit if we have enough time, Iran has issued an arrest warrant for Donald Trump, and they have requested Interpol assist them. Donald Trump yesterday tweeted out a supporter shouting white power. It's been a wild weekend. Justice Roberts was the deciding decision on the Supreme Court case overturning Louisiana's abortion restrictions. Unemployment numbers are up and billionaires are richer. St. Louis, there was a couple in St. Louis. You have to see the picture, but I'm going to describe it. You know what? That's going to be the featured image for today's episode so that you can see the madness and the derangement that's going on in the minds of rich white conservatives. Obama, well, I'm going to definitely save that Obama thing with his wife. Obama accidentally put his wife on blast. That's going to be in the Patrons episode. And of course, let's begin here. Coronavirus. Not much to laugh about there. Actually, there's nothing to laugh about there. The rise in cases. We are breaking records everywhere. We are breaking records in every single state. And I believe Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis, they're leading the bunch. Over the weekend, they had 9,000 new cases on Saturday, 9,500 new cases on Sunday. If you look at the curve, everyone was talking about flattening the curve, and we were doing pretty decently. Look at the curve now. It's almost as if we're going to make that initial bump, that initial phase. I'm not calling it the first wave because we're still on the second part of the first wave. But if you look at the curve now, I'll put it on the screen for people watching on YouTube. You can see that we are about to overtake what happened at the beginning of this pandemic. And this is in part, actually not in part, wholly because states rushed to reopen. They reopened bars. They reopened gyms. People are trying to point to protesters. But we've seen so far. Now, listen, I'm not going to deny the risk that protesters took and the possibility that they contributed to the rise. But so far, the rise has been directly attributable to all of the reopenings of bars, gyms, nail salons, restaurants, because people just had to go. People just had to go to Hooters. People just had to go and sit at their bar. And the reality, what happened was those business owners lobbied the government. They lobbied their governors and they lobbied the president of the United States to reopen the economy before we were ready. Because what's more important to them is to make sure that they make their money. And because this country does not have a pause button, this country is so addicted to profits that it could not pause for a month in order to save lives. And if you look at the curve now, we are on our way to a new level of pain in this country. Pain, death, sorrow, because we open prematurely. We don't know exactly what extent the protesters had on this. I do recall one study that is showing that there is no significant uptick because of the protests, because the protests were outside, and it's more difficult to transmit COVID-19 outside than it is in a bar. If you look at the risk factors put out by the CDC, like being in a bar is the most dangerous place that you could be. Being outside is the least dangerous place you could be, except for being inside of your home. But this is directly the result of America needing to. There's so much ignorance around this. The level of stupidity that is making us so vulnerable to COVID-19 is unimaginable. It's something that you could not write in a novel and actually get it published because the editors would be like, this is too on the nose. The fact that we have people who refuse to wear masks, they refuse to do their part in stopping the spread of this, but they want you to come out and spend money in their establishment. It's exactly, they are contributing to the exact factors that are necessary to exacerbate this problem. They demand that you come out and spend your money, but they're also demanding that you not wear a mask because it's unpatriotic. Last week I said anti-patriotic. I was thinking too hard. Anti-patriotic. It's unpatriotic to wear a mask. And then now you have people who are really into this thing saying that, oh, this is going to make me sick, or wearing a mask is going to make me sick. There are some health conditions that a mask makes it more difficult for you. But for most healthy adults, even if you're not exactly the paragon of health, wearing a mask is not going to hurt you. But we have a level of ignorance in this country that is unimaginable, that is indescribable. I've yet to put my finger on the depth of the ignorance that is driving driving this country. Not only the outbreak in COVID-19, but it's driving American politics. It's protecting the ruling elite. It's a level of ignorance that is saturating down to every aspect. It's the conspiracy theories. There's so much ignorance that surrounds us. And it's exactly the amount of ignorance that is necessary to destroy this country. That's the part. The ignorance that we see, whether it be weaponized ignorance or genuine stupidity, whatever the source is, it is the exact amount of ignorance that could bring this country to its knees. We don't need Russia. We don't need any outside force. There's not an outside force that is an existential threat to the United States of America. The unparalleled ignorance in America is the existential threat to America. That is what's going to destroy us. That is what's going to get even more people killed, man. Listen to this clip of Governor Ron DeSantis. It's a little mashup. It's something that I put out over the weekend because I wanted to show the absurdity of it all. I wanted to show how ignorant this country really is and how ignorant our political leaders are.
Because you got a lot of people in your profession who waxed poetically for weeks and weeks about how Florida was going to be just like New York. Wait 2 weeks, Florida's going to be next. Just like Italy, wait 2 weeks. Well, hell, we're 8 weeks away from that, and it hasn't happened.
A few moments later.
Nearly 9,000 new coronavirus cases in the state of Florida, smashing the previous record of 5,500.
The highest ever single-day report comes as the state also saw a record number of people tested, but more than 13% were positive.
13% are positive. New York and New Jersey and Connecticut have issued a statement saying that no one is going to be, I don't know how they're going to enforce this, but no one is going to be allowed in those states, those tri-states, if their state, the state that they're coming from, has infection rates of over 10%. That's where we are. And we're not only at the stage where we are getting ready to devastate, or we're currently devastating our healthcare system, our nurses, our doctors, our ICU units. We're devastating them. They're maxing out all over the country. But now we have state against state. We have a cluster of states against another cluster of states because the federal government has fully abdicated its responsibility to protect its citizens. And so now you have states against states. Governors who are implementing policies to flatten the curve against governors who are like, well, it hasn't happened yet. Ron DeSantis, I want you to listen to these numbers. This is just this weekend, the past 4 days. Let's go. On the 25th, 5,000 new cases. On the 26th, 9,000 new cases. It was actually 8,942, 9,000 new cases. On the 27th, 9,600 new cases. And yesterday, the 28th, they had 8,500 new cases. This and the governor was like, oh, hell, it hasn't happened yet. Well, dumbass, it's happened now. It's happening now. And now they're shutting down all the, they're requiring bars not serve any alcohol instead of just shutting down the bars. There's a level of ignorance in this country that is out of control. It is weaponized. There is weaponized ignorance. There is intentional political ignorance. They know better. They don't do better. They do know better, but they don't. And they play on the stupidity or the ignorance or the obtuseness of their supporters. They feed into the fear, they feed into the anxiety, and they play on the ignorance. They provide misinformation to enhance the ignorance. And now those chickens are coming home to roost because a lot of people are going to die. A lot of people are going to die because of the overwhelming, crushing pressure of the weight of the ignorance in this country that has been a political tool of Donald Trump. That's how he got into the White House. It has been the political tool of people like Ron DeSantis in Florida. It is a political weaponized tool, and now we are getting ready to pay the price. And I hope for everyone, listen, here's the flip side of it. You can still be safe. You can still stay in your home if you can work from home. If you are lucky enough to be able to stay home, stay home. If you must be out in public, do everyone else a favor because you need them to do you the favor. Wear a mask. Do the essential workers the favor. Essential workers, we stand in solidarity with you. I am sorry that you cannot be inside safe like we are, but all I can do is encourage everyone to stay out of the streets, stay home, go indoors. If you must go out, wear a mask. Wear a mask. We can save so many lives if you wear a mask. But instead, we have people running conspiracy theories about the mask being some type of control. And the mask being a setup for the mark of the beast coming to inject you with the mark of the beast in the vaccination. The level of ignorance that is surrounding this is insurmountable. It is almost insurmountable. But if we don't confront it head on and call it what it is, we don't have time to go through the nuances of people's conspiracy theories and try to debunk every single line of it. No, you are just ignorant as shit, and you're going to get a lot of people killed, you obtuse moron. Okay. All right. The president of the United States, I always refer to him as the white supremacist in chief. That's because he has proven that he is the lead white supremacist in this country. He's not even using dog whistles anymore. This is what he tweeted out yesterday, and he only deleted the tweet. I have the actual tweet, but he tweeted out this video yesterday, and he only deleted it after so much pressure was thrown on him by everyone around him. Listen to what this man says.
Where's your white hood? Where's your white hood? Racist. Yeah, you got it. White power. Yes, there you go. White power. You hear that?
White power. White power. This is what the president of the United States tweeted out yesterday. Now, it's not a surprise. And I know, you know, we're at the stage of Donald Trump's evolution where everyone is like, I guess the smart or woke thing to do is to say, why are you surprised? Yeah, no, I'm not surprised. In fact, this is why he has a title as of the white supremacist in chief. I'm not surprised. However, it is not only newsworthy, but it is a critical moment in American history. Then we've basically gone back to Woodrow Wilson, right? Woodrow Wilson, I'm only bringing that up because Princeton has decided to remove the name of Woodrow Wilson from their international economic and policy, whatever the name of that department is, right? Woodrow Wilson, who was a devout white nationalist, right? But this is where we're going back to. We have a man in the White House who has no problem tweeting this. And he said, oh, I didn't hear that. That was his excuse. He said he did not hear that part. Yeah, right, Donald Trump. We really believe that you did not. Well, you know what? Even if he didn't listen to it, that shows you the level of ignorance that is operating in the White House, which is also dangerous. We always ask the question, what is worse, malevolence or ignorance? In Donald Trump's case, they are equivalent because the damage is done. And he has rallied the white supremacists in this country. They are excited. They love this. They embrace this. They're exhilarated. They are so excited about the fact that they have a person in the White House who pushes the envelope of racism in this country. And the fact that we still have people who are trying to equivocate over Donald Trump's racism. But let's start here. The fact that we have media outlets that still do not allow their journalists to call Donald Trump what he is, a racist, despite the fact that at every single turn he has demonstrated that he is a racist, that he is steeped in white supremacy. He is drenched with white nationalism. He surrounds himself with people like Stephen Miller, who is the poster boy for white nationalism in this country. Despite the reality of who Donald Trump has always shown us he is, his history before he even became president, Donald Trump has shown us that he is committed to racism in this country. And yet we still have people who either won't call him what he is, who like to debate the nuances of whether it's actually racism. And then you even have morons who think that the thing to do is for us to draw some type of alliance between the left and Donald Trump supporters. And the irony of that video that he shared was the fact that you had some rich, retired, older, white, privileged, they have everything that they want, probably millionaire white folks driving in golf carts shouting white power. Now, when I juxtapose this, I'm not going to do it here, but later on in this episode, I'm going to juxtapose those people shouting white power from their privileged Floridian summer home wealth and those two morons in St. Louis who stood on their porch in their luxurious home with weapons because protesters were marching in the streets. But this is America. This is the level of ignorance. This is the level of racism. This is the level of control from the ruling elite to continuously feed poor, useful idiots the racism that they need to continue voting against their self-interest, their economic best interest. These are all the forces. This is the same mindset that is keeping people from wearing masks. This is the same mindset that's about to get hundreds of thousands of more people, Americans, killed from COVID-19. I have to make an addendum to what I said earlier in the first segment. It's not just the ignorance of America that's going to destroy America. It is the ignorance, arrogance, and the bigotry of America that is the greatest threat to its survival. That is the unholy trinity of our destruction, and the rulers of this country wallow in it like pigs wallowing in mud. I've got to say a couple of more things. I know I've got a lot of stories to cover, but I just have to say that the ignorance is necessary for this power structure to be propped up. The weaponized ignorance is necessary for this power structure to be propped up. It is what not only the power structure, but inside of the power structure. It is how one faction, I want to be sure, there is one power structure in this country, two factions, the conservative faction and the liberal faction. And the only way the conservative faction is able to maintain power in this era is through this weaponized ignorance. Because if they ever remove the veil of stupidity from their followers, if they ever actively challenge their followers, don't get me wrong, there's some ignorance on the left. Yes, there's ignorance on the left. There's ignorance everywhere. There's ignorance in the Democratic Party. But the paragon of ignorance in this country in this moment right now is shining from the conservative movement. And that's because they have no substance. They literally have nothing. Part of the reason they don't have anything to stand on, they don't have policies to stand on, they don't have actual policies that they fight for, that's because the Democratic Party has moved so far to the right that the only place for Republicans to go has been to the absurdity. They've gone to absurdity, and they've mastered it. They have mastered the art of having an entire political movement around nothingness except for ignorance. That is the conservative movement. And that is who is in power. That's what's running the Senate. Power for the sake of power, but the only way they can maintain that power is by maintaining a level of ignorance throughout the country that is a problem. That now that ignorance is contributing to our demise. I was going to tweet this last night, but I wanted to save it for my book, but whatever. I'll say it here. The amount of ignorance needed to sustain a corrupt society is the exact amount of ignorance needed to destroy that society. What the Republicans, what conservatives, what the ruling elite, the entire ruling regime needs to sustain their grip on power is a level of ignorance that is going to destroy not only their power, but this entire country. And in this era of democratized information, in this era of hyperpartisanship and tremendous propaganda machines funded by billions of dollars, that ignorance is too easily amassed, too easily galvanized and deployed. And here we are with rampant ignorance, rampant lies, propaganda, misinformation, people being passionate about their stupidity. They are passionate about their unawareness. They are passionate about the lies that they have been told to the point where they are willing to fight and die to not wear a fucking mask. That is where we are in this country. And it is a direct result of the ruling elite needing that level of stupidity to sustain their grip on power. All right. The only good news that seems to come in 2020 so far has been coming from the Supreme Court. Decision after decision keeps us on the path towards progress when we fully expected the Supreme Court, which has a conservative majority, to provide us with decisions that turn progress backwards. This morning, out of Washington, D.C., I'm reading from the New York Times. The Supreme Court on Monday struck down a Louisiana law that could have left the state with one abortion clinic. The vote was 5-4, with Chief Justice John Roberts voting with the court's 4-member liberal wing, but not adopting its reasoning. The Chief Justice said respect for precedent compelled him to vote with the majority. The case was the court's first on abortion since President Trump's appointments of 2 justices shifted the court to the right. The Louisiana law, which was enacted in 2014, required doctors performing abortions to have admitting privileges at nearby hospitals. The law's supporters said that the law protects the health and safety of women seeking abortions and that the requirements for obtaining admitting privileges helps ensure the competence of doctors. Opponents disputed that, saying that hospitalizations after abortions are rare, that women would receive medical care at the hospitals whether their doctors had admitting privileges or not, and that abortion providers are often unable to obtain admitting privileges for reasons unrelated to their competence. And for anyone who's worried about abortions run amok, in Louisiana, there's only 5 doctors who provide abortions in the entire state of Louisiana. And I want to be sure here, because I know a lot of people oppose abortion for religious reasons. And I would just point you to the fact that the greatest proportion of people who get abortions in this country are Christian. And if Christians practice what they preached, instead of trying to remove the constitutional right based on the 4th Amendment, based on privacy, away from women to choose, if they would practice what they preached, then we would see a tremendous decline in the number of abortions. Or we could address the economic conditions, which lead 73% of women to get abortions in the first place. But y'all not ready for that conversation.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
And here we go. At this point in every single episode, I'd like to take a minute to thank the people who make it possible, our patrons. Very special welcome to Joshua Trupin, Catherine Chappelle, Aiden Wolf, Elliot Lamb, Sean C., Nicholas Alvarado, Stephen Ryan, Courtney Wicker, Kai Dorothy, Damon Schuler. Everybody just bop your head. Very special welcome to Scoots Brodo, Kevin, Evan McDonald, Andrew Ritchie, David, M. Ashaki, Derek M., and Micah Hill. Thank you all for becoming patrons. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/the BPD show, where you get twice the content, uncut interviews, none of the advertisements, and you give me the ability to speak truth to power, whether the powerful like it or not.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Yeah. Come on. All right, I want to wrap up the public segment by talking about those two morons in St. Louis who busted out of their homes with looked like an AR-15 and maybe a 32. They were holding it. I mean, if you look at the picture, they clearly, I would be surprised if they know how to load the weapon. Now, it's funny because it's comical in the sense of American absurdity, but it could have been a significant tragedy. And this was in St. Louis as protesters peacefully protested. All they did were march and sang songs. They were marching to the mayor's house to demand her resignation because the mayor doxed not every person, but she doxed quite a few people. I want to slow down and make sure that you understand because I'm getting ahead of myself. The mayor of St. Louis last week on a live stream doxed several people who signed petitions calling for the police to be defunded. On a live stream, she said their name and their addresses, which is an act of political terrorism. It is an act of intimidation to try to sway people from protesting and standing up for what they believe. So at the core of the protest that took place last night in St. Louis in this luxurious gated community was a valid critical concern that someone in power abused that power to intimidate the people over which they wield that power. All right, I just want to make sure that you understood why the protesters were out there. Not to mention the fact that they have a constitutional right to protest. But the protest took them into a luxurious gated community. And now we throw in a serious class dynamic. It was a luxurious game. And I'm wondering what the hell this mayor does besides be a mayor that she's living in this community in the first place. But I digress. They marched on the streets and on the public sidewalks, or the sidewalks that were not owned by the individual households. They're owned by the community as a whole. They did not trespass on anyone's property. And as they marched, out comes two attorneys. They probably thought they were Bonnie and Clyde. They were more like Karen and Cleotis, holding their weapons like a 5-year-old would hold a weapon, carelessly slinging those weapons around in the air to try to intimidate the protesters. And as the narrative is woven, everyone is saying on the right that they were trying to protect their property, but no one stepped a foot on their property. Those protesters were marching to the mayor's house to respond to her act of political terrorism and intimidation. And yet here comes Karen and Cleotis looking like absolute morons. Now, they're actually attorneys, Mark T. McCloskey and Patricia N. McCloskey. The pictures on their website are obviously taken many years ago when they were not as deranged and hocked up on whatever they were snorting before they came outside barefooted with their weapons. But the absurdity of it is that no one was on their property. They were on the sidewalks. But still, let's get behind. But besides the technical, no one was coming for their property yet. But I guess for them, the sight of protests marching up the street, singing and chanting songs and banging on their instruments and singing Kumbaya was a terrifying notion enough for them to run outside. They barely had time to get their socks. They didn't even get their socks on. But they grabbed their Bloody Mary. You can see a Bloody Mary in their picture. And they grabbed their AR-15. And I guess it was either 22 or 32. I can't really tell. And they grabbed it and they ran outside and waved the weapons at the protesters. Now, if you really think about the source of their unfounded anxiety, it's coming from right-wing propaganda. It's coming from outlets like Fox News. It's coming from the president of the United States, right? In their mind, this is Antifa. Oh, my God. Antifa is marching up their streets. Not yet. Not yet. Trust us. You'll know when they come. But these were citizens of St. Louis who had a legitimate grievance with the mayor of St. Louis, who used her political power to intimidate and to put the lives of citizens from her city in danger because they had the nerve to call for the police to be defunded. There's levels of stupidity, and that stupidity becomes extremely dangerous. And this is what we saw last night. It is laughable because the way they handle their weapons show that they're not prepared, but a lot of people could have gotten hurt. Patrons, stay tuned. A whole lot more show to go. Everyone else, thank you for being a beautiful audience. I will see you tomorrow.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.